It started like a bad joke. The skies split open above the Mojave Desert. No warning, no satellites catching anything, no seismic activity, no blips on radar. Just silence. Then a rumble like the earth was clearing its throat, and a ship the size of a city block floated down from the clouds like it owned the damn place. Chrome black, hexagonal plates shifting like reptilian skin, and glowing lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. It didn't just land, it settled, smug, confident, and arrogant. The first thing they did wasn't contact humanity. No speeches, no greetings. Instead, a hatch opened and they dumped trash. Literal waste. Stinking sludge, glowing in weird colors, some of it moving on its own. And then they defecated. Right on Earth. Right in front of cameras. 10-foot-tall, pale blue creatures with thick necks and 4 arms squatted and laughed in a guttural, gurgling language. Like they didn't just land on our planet. Like they owned it. Like we were beneath them. CNN went live first. Then BBC. Then every media outlet on Earth scrambled to cover the first contact. But instead of a handshake, they got a middle finger made of alien bowel movements. Social media lost its mind. Memes, outrage, hashtags like hashtag alien shitstorm and hashtag welcome to Earth assholes trended globally. But the laughter died down quick because someone saw it. Not just on screen. In person. Caleb Hayes, ex-Marine, survivalist and desert rat, had been living off-grid for 5 years just outside of Needles, California. Solar power, rainwater collection, dried food, radio scanner. He saw it all unfold from a nearby ridge. With a pair of old military binoculars, he caught the entire act. And he wasn't laughing. They just crapped on our flag, he muttered, squinting into the glass. He wasn't being metaphorical. The aliens had, quite literally, dropped their waste on a tattered U.S. flag that had been stuck in the desert sand by some forgotten wanderer. Caleb didn't know if it was intentional, but it didn't matter. That night, Caleb sent out a signal. Not to the government, not to the media, but to his network. People like him, old vets, conspiracy nuts, off-grid patriots, militia types, nerd with grudges. People who had always believed this day would come and had stockpiled for it. The radio crackled with confirmations. Texas, Idaho, Montana, Michigan, even Alaska. They think we're weak. They'll learn. The U.S. government tried to initiate contact on day 2. They sent drones. The drones didn't return. A fleet of Apache helicopters approached on day 3. One by one, they were plucked from the sky by invisible beams and dismantled mid-air like toys. The aliens didn't even look angry. They looked bored. But on day 4, someone fired the first shot. It wasn't the military. It wasn't a country. It was a 17-year-old girl from Nevada, Jenny Redline Alvarez, racing drone enthusiast and part-time hacker. Rigged her favorite FPV drone with a homemade explosive, guided it straight into the mouth of one of the aliens as it chuckled at a burning American flag and detonated it. The footage went viral before the explosion even cleared. 1 alien dead, 3 injured. The first blood drawn. Human blood was next. The aliens retaliated. They didn't send warnings, they vaporized 3 cities. Albuquerque, Amarillo, Tucson, gone. Dust and silence. That's when the world realized this wasn't a visit. It was a challenge. But humans? We don't go down easy. Something broke that day. Not fear, not panic. Something deeper, something older. A primitive defiance. The kind that forged empires and tore them down. The kind that screamed, you might be stronger, faster, more advanced, but we're still here. Caleb gathered his crew in the desert under moonlight. Former Green Berets, bikers, scientists, rednecks with rocket launchers. People who didn't agree on much, but agreed on this. No alien craps on Earth and walks away. They thought it would scare us into submission. 3 cities turned to ash in seconds. Millions gone. Governments staggered. News anchors cried on live TV. World leaders sent pleas for peace that were ignored. Some collapsed on camera. But not everyone. Somewhere in the Nevada hills, a young girl's drone had sent a louder message than any president's speech. We can bleed them. The footage of Jenny Redline Alvarez's explosive drone kill had already hit 500 million views by the time the 3rd city vanished. And deep within survivalist bunkers, shipping container strongholds, and cracked garage labs, humanity began to whisper in unison. If we can kill one, we can kill more. Caleb Hayes watched the dust clouds over Albuquerque rise like funeral smoke, his jaw tight. He stood shirtless in the cold morning air, skin rough like worn leather, eyes burning. He lit a match, dropped it into a fire barrel, and turned to the people gathered around him. "It's not about revenge anymore," he said. "It's about message control." It didn't need to be soldiers. Just mad enough, brave enough, mean enough. The aliens had come here expecting to break humanity. Instead, they woke something buried deep, a collective primal rage, centuries of defiance, war-born instincts we thought we'd left behind. And it wasn't just Caleb. Across the planet, similar cells were rising. In Poland, an X-bomb technician named Merrick wired abandoned train tracks with high-yield improvised mines made from fertilizer and tank shells. In Kenya, Maasai warriors joined forces with ex-special forces to turn the plains into ambush zones, using the land they knew better than any satellite. In South Korea, gamers who had once led entire armies in MMOs began organizing real-world coordinated attacks using drones, RC cars, and hacked city infrastructure. The aliens thought they'd be dealing with one planet, one species, one language. But what they got was 8 billion unpredictable minds, each with something to prove. Meanwhile, inside the alien mothership, now nicknamed the Throne by online forums, the invaders weren't celebrating. The death of one of their own had stirred discomfort. Not fear, but insult. These were not a race used to resistance. Conquest was usually silent, immediate. Civilizations kneeling before they even arrived. But Earth stank of defiance. Inside their ship, the creatures consulted their war protocols. Their species, called the Grakthor, was old. Conquering was religion. They believed Earth was theirs by divine right. But the numbers didn't lie. Well, their own dead. 3 injured. A pattern forming. Still, they underestimated us again. On day 7, just before dawn, Operation Broken Crown began. A single alien scout, strolling through the ruins of Tucson, stopped to urinate on what remained of school bus. Behind the rubble, 3 humans waited, an engineer, a welder, and a mechanic. They had fused an old pickup truck's engine to a rusted cannon and loaded it with rebar laced in high explosives. The makeshift weapon was ugly, loud, primitive, but it worked. The blast took the alien's head clean off. The rest of its body twitched, stumbled, and fell backward into the rubble. The humans didn't run. They filmed it, uploaded it with a caption, "One more for Earth." By the next day, 7 more aliens were dead, then 15, then dozens. The Grakthor responded by deploying drones the size of motorcycles, each equipped with heat-tracking sensors and plasma weapons. But Earth fought dirty. We used distractions, decoys, fire, mirrors, noise. We used birds, entire flocks of trained pigeons with explosives strapped to their bellies swarmed alien scouts in London. A boy who had never left his village wired his mother's kitchen appliances into an EMP that disabled 3 alien drones in Bangladesh. The aliens had underestimated something vital. They thought primitive meant weak, but primitive just means creative without rules. And humanity? We've been breaking rules since fire. By the time the Grakthor realized what they were up against, it was too late. Because Earth wasn't scared anymore. Earth was angry. They came expecting obedience. But by the end of the second week, the Grakthor realized they'd triggered something feral, something they didn't understand. Not just resistance, not just survival, but rage sharpened into creativity. And creativity was deadly. In the burned-out husk of Amarillo, where fire still licked shattered windows and scorched pavement, a group of firefighters-turned-fighters rigged pressurized oxygen tanks as torpedoes. They called it Dragon's Breath, aimed it from the top of a shattered parking garage, and launched it straight into the belly of a scouting drone. The explosion lit up the night like a second sun. Somewhere in Russia, Cossacks on horseback rode through frozen forests with flamethrowers strapped to their backs, ambushing alien patrols and disappearing into the snow like ghosts. And in the Philippines, old fishermen took their boats out at night, lanterns doused, engines silent, and boarded a Grakthor landing skiff floating near the coast. They didn't have guns. They had machetes, rope, fire. That ship never left. Caleb watched it all unfold from the makeshift command post near the Grand Canyon. A big canvas tent with antennae sticking out like a porcupine. Maps covered every table. Pushpins, markers, names, targets. "This isn't war," said a quiet voice beside him. Jenny Alvarez, the girl who'd started it all, was watching a grainy video feed of resistance attacks happening in real time. She still wore her drone goggles around her neck like a crown. "It's art," she whispered. Caleb smirked, then looked around at the new recruits filing in. Civilians, mechanics, programmers, prisoners who volunteered, kids barely out of high school. Not trained soldiers, but angry, raw human energy. "We don't need to win by numbers," he said. "We win by madness." The Grakthor started to adapt. They deployed bipedal tanks with shields, thick armor, and mounted disintegrators, but only made us bolder. One man in Canada used a frozen lake to trap 3 tanks, lured them onto thin ice, detonated shaped charges, and watched them vanish in a freezing blackness. In Brazil, an army of engineers turned junkyards into weapon factories. By melting old cars and twisted scaffolding, they built massive slingshot launchers that hurled burning tires soaked in oil and nails onto enemy walkways. The screams that followed weren't human. The aliens retaliated again, harder this time. In Paris, they collapsed the Eiffel Tower with a sonic weapon. In Tokyo, they unleashed clouds of engineered parasites that devoured flesh. In Egypt, they turned the pyramids into ash just to send a message. The message was received, loud and clear, but not the one they intended. Because with every monument they destroyed, they gave birth to 100 more warriors. Even prisoners of war, once held in makeshift Grakthor cages, began escaping. One old man in Nevada managed to kill his captor with a pen. A pen. Then someone hacked the aliens. It wasn't a nation. It wasn't a government lab. It was a girl named Keisha, 14 years old, Bronx native, computer genius, and bedroom rebel. She used a cracked tablet, a solar battery, and a stolen alien comm relay to breach the Grakthor internal network. She didn't just spy, she spoke. The alien's command screen, once cold and lifeless, suddenly flickered. A human face appeared, a brown-skinned girl with braids and a crooked smile. She waved. "Hi," she said. "This planet has teeth." The feed cut before they could trace her. Panic rippled through their command ranks. For the first time, they began to wonder. What if Earth wasn't the easy one they'd expected? What if this species was worse than war? The next night, Caleb stood at a ridge overlooking a distant alien drop zone. The horizon glowed orange. He lifted his battered radio, thumb hovering over the button. "We're not just fighting back," he said. "We're making history." He clicked the mic. "All units, Light them up. Across the globe, fires ignited in unison. Makeshift bombs, ambushes, drone attacks, synchronized explosions in every time zone. It wasn't coordinated by generals. It wasn't planned by presidents. It was Earth, raw, united, furious. And this time, we weren't fighting for survival. We were fighting for revenge. The night sky over Earth was no longer black. It burned. Fires across continents lit the darkness like constellations made of rage. The Grakthor mothership hovered silently above Nevada, still cloaked in its shimmering dark-tech shields. But even they could see it. Pockets of defiance erupting like chain reactions, each one louder than the last. And the humans? They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted to be seen. In the scorched remains of Berlin, someone painted a giant message across the side of a bombed skyscraper in blood-red spray paint. You landed on the wrong rock. In Sydney, a hacked billboard flashed the words, "Come down and fight, cowards." Everywhere the aliens looked, there was fury staring back. The Grakthor High Ascendants finally held what they called a dread session, a private council meant only for the gravest emergencies. Their tall, translucent skulls flickered with pulses of violet light as they spoke in their guttural, clicking tongue. One message repeated across the chambers. They're not like the others. One warrior cast member suggested escalating to planetary sterilization. Another argued to retreat and regroup. But before they could agree, the Earth made the choice for them. Because that night, we stole one of their ships. Not the military, not NASA, just three nobodies from Detroit. Gavin, former tow truck driver. Rico, ex-mechanic. And Tasha, an electrician who'd been wiring houses since she was 15. They snuck onto a downed Grakthor scout skiff during an ambush, killed the injured pilot with a crowbar, and somehow figured out the controls. With Rico hot wiring, Tasha reading alien panels like puzzle boxes, and Gavin screaming left. And no, other left, they managed to fly the thing straight into the Mojave air, scraping trees and nearly crashing 5 times. But they made it. Footage of the trio piloting the ship, badly, wildly, hilariously, was streamed worldwide through Jenny Alvarez's drone network. It went viral within minutes. But it wasn't the humor that stunned the world. It was the possibility. If 3 random Earthlings could fly alien tech, what else was possible? That question spread like fire. Suddenly, every fallen ship became treasure. Humans began harvesting Grakthor equipment, tearing down broken drones, ripping open husks of crashed walkers, dragging scorched panels into garages and basements to reverse engineer. We learned fast, too fast. In just 4 days, humanity created a railgun made from salvaged alien coils and a New York City subway car axle. Energy shields forged from scraps and powered by old laptop batteries. EMP grenades built in Nairobi using microwaves and salvage capacitor banks. In one wild case, an Indian teenager used a Grakthor biohelmet as a Wi-Fi amplifier to control 5 drones at once. The Grakthor watched this unfold with growing dread. Every dead unit became Earth's blueprint. Every defeat became innovation. Humanity had always been good at one thing, learning from pain. And the pain was far from over. On day 15, a coordinated resistance assault hit 4 Grakthor landing zones at once: Denver, Rio, Cape Town, and Seoul. Homemade tanks, converted buses with welded plating, civilian snipers using hollow point rounds soaked in alien blood. The results? 2 full alien squads obliterated. 1 mini-ship captured intact. A Grakthor commanding officer publicly executed on livestream. The image of him, head severed and mounted on a scorched car hood, became a global icon. It was no longer just a fight. It was personal. The Grakthor, enraged and humiliated, began broadcasting threats in every Earth language. Lay down your arms or face extermination. But Earth had an answer. From New York to Johannesburg, from Cairo to Sao Paulo, humans rose their middle fingers toward the sky. One old woman in Tokyo summed it up best on a shaky live stream. They try to conquer animals, but we're not animals. We're the storm. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, the Grakthor realized they might lose. The Grakthor had no word for panic. In their culture, fear was a flaw that had been bred out generations ago. At least, that's what they believed, until they faced humanity, until they saw what unbreakable defiance looked like, until they heard Earth laugh back at their threats. And laugh we did, because even while cities burned, while skies rained fire, and while governments faltered, we fought harder, smarter, meaner. The resistance was no longer scattered. It had evolved. What started as isolated chaos had become a web of coordinated retaliation. Thanks to hackers like Keisha and engineers like Tasha, humans tapped into the aliens' comms, intercepted patrol routes, and mapped out weak points in real time. By the third week, Earth had a kill list. Grakthor commanders, heavy units, supply drop points, and one by one, we checked off the names. In Canada, resistance fighters built a trap with downed power lines and wet snow, electrocuting 6 alien walkers in a single strike. In the Congo, tribes and scientists worked together to poison water sources the aliens were unknowingly tapping into. In Los Angeles, a group of urban skaters turned parking garages into vertical death traps, dropping grenades and bricks from above. Everywhere, the aliens bled. Back at the Grand Canyon outpost, Caleb stood in front of a salvaged alien display unit they'd wired into a cracked plasma screen. Around him, human survivors stared at the flickering alien feed. Grakthor language scrolled across the screen. It wasn't boasting this time. It wasn't threats. It was a request for a meeting. They want a ceasefire? Caleb scoffed. Now. Jenny Alvarez leaned over and smirked. You scare a bully enough, they remember their manners real fast. But Caleb wasn't convinced. He turned to his war council, now made up of teachers, gang members, coders, retired generals, and even a kid who used to flip burgers before building EMP traps in his garage. Vote, he asked. One by one, hands rose. All but one voted the same. No negotiations. We had bled too much, lost too much, learned too much, because now we had something we didn't have at the start. Hope mixed with fury, and that was nuclear. The Resistance launched Operation Ghost Hand that night. A suicide unit disguised themselves using bits of alien armor and tech. Wearing Grakthor breastplates, helmets, and communication devices, they slipped aboard a low hover patrol skiff as it descended into Montana. They didn't try to escape, didn't even bring return plans. They brought detonators. And when the skiff rose back up, transmitting all clear in Grakthor code, it exploded in midair, raining flaming alien steel for 3 miles. 27 human volunteers dead, 80 Grakthor vaporized. It was the single deadliest blow yet. The aliens had crossed a line when they disrespected Earth. But now Earth had crossed one back. We were no longer afraid to die if it meant taking them with us. For the first time, the Grakthor High Ascendants issued a term they had not used in thousands of years. Verdicts Kralik, strategic withdrawal consideration. But not all Grakthor agreed. Some still believed Earth could be crushed with enough pressure, enough death, enough terror, and so they prepared a final offensive, one that would make Hiroshima look like a sparkler, a weapon of planetary reconfiguration, something they called the Pulse. It would rewrite gravity, twist electromagnetism, burn every living thing in a wave of silent annihilation. One push of a button, and Earth would be ash. But here's the thing the Grakthor didn't know. We'd already infiltrated their command. The Pulse. It wasn't a bluff. The Grakthor's ultimate weapon, their God Switch, was buried deep inside their mothership, the Throne, floating high above Nevada, still invisible to most eyes. It was silent, unseen, but not untouched, because 5 humans were already inside. They'd gotten in 3 days ago, during the chaos of Operation Ghost Hand, hidden in the wreckage of a drone decoy that the aliens unknowingly salvaged and brought aboard for study. 5 ghosts. No names, no pasts, just code names. Ash, Blink, Hammer, Wisp, Doc. Ash was the leader, an ex-Navy SEAL whose record had been wiped clean after some incident no one talked about. Blink, a parkour courier from Singapore who could move through ducts like smoke. Hammer was Strength, former prison boxer turned underground fighter. Wisp was the tech, a girl who had broken into government firewalls just to prove she could. Doc, a trauma surgeon from Aleppo who had sewn up hundreds of bodies during the last war and wasn't afraid of what came next. They had one mission: disable the Pulse, or if necessary, die inside the Throne, making sure it never activated. They moved like shadows through its corridors, using stolen cloaks stitched from alien fabric, wired with heat-dampening tech. Every hallway was alive with alien movement, Grakthor warriors stomping in patrols, drones hovering like sharks, sensors twitching like flies. One false step and they were gone. But Wisp had figured something out. The Grakthor tech ran on bioelectric patterns. Their machines responded to skin currents, breath rhythms, even brain waves. Wisp built a mimic from a dead Grakthor's remains, something that let them slip past sensors by smelling like the enemy. It was disgusting. It was genius. And it worked. Meanwhile, on Earth, chaos brewed. The Throne hovered lower now, just 9,000 feet above ground. Civilians below watched it like a black star. Resistance fighters debated whether to launch a direct assault, but no one knew the Pulse was real, except Caleb. He'd seen fragments of code in intercepted transmissions. Keisha confirmed it. Jenny's drones had picked up strange energy patterns. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The aliens were preparing to erase the board. Caleb stood before his war network, lips tight. This next week, he said, voice gravel, could be the last week Earth breathes. But he didn't beg. He didn't plead. He grinned. Let's make it the loudest damn week they've ever seen. Across the planet, all-out war ignited. No longer hit and run. No more hide and ambush. Humans charged. In New York, 10,000 rioters, engineers, janitors, ex-cons, artists stormed a Grakthor drop zone with chainsaws and fireworks. In Delhi, thousands launched kites covered in metallic foil, reflecting enemy lasers and blinding drone sensors. In Kenya, warriors rode modified dirt bikes laced with napalm and plowed straight into alien convoys. It was glorious. It was ugly. It was war the way Earth did it best. Messy, desperate, unstoppable. Back inside the Throne, Ash and his team reached the chamber. The Pulse control room looked like a cathedral made of bone and metal. One giant panel in the center, pulsing with red veins of energy, waiting for a single Grakthor fingerprint. Wisp connected her rig. Blink secured the doors. Hammer stood ready to smash anything that moved. Doc checked their vitals. Ash pulled the trigger on a small device clipped to his belt. Go live. Every resistance unit got the signal. The Throne's exact location, coordinates, weak points, interior map overlays. It wasn't just a stealth mission anymore. It was an invitation. Caleb, watching the data light up his screen, grabbed the mic. All units, bring them hell. And above them, like a second sun waiting to die, the mothership trembled. The final battle had begun. The clouds cracked like bones. Above Nevada, the black shape of the throne hovered silently, but tension radiated from it like heat. Below, the desert teemed, not with fear, not with confusion, but with fury. Resistance fighters, militia bands, and even ordinary civilians gathered around makeshift artillery, shoulder-mounted rockets, slingshots loaded with incendiaries, and alien weapons strapped together with duct tape and guts. The signal from Ash's infiltration team had changed everything. For the first time, Earth had a target. Not vague drones, not skiffs, not patrols, but the heart. Inside the mothership, Ash's team huddled in the pulse chamber. Wisp knelt at the console, her hands dancing across the alien tech like it was a piano from hell. Her fingers bled where the bioreactive interface pricked her skin. It required pain. It needed blood. Gragthor tech didn't run on kindness. 3 more minutes, she said. Then this thing's locked down, or it fries me trying. Ash stood watch, rifle aimed at the door, which groaned under pressure. They were found. On the surface, Caleb raised a cracked walkie. "You sure about this?" he asked Jenny. She loaded her last homemade rocket into the launcher. "Nope," she said, grinning. "But if I die, I'm going viral." Then she winked, and Earth rose. Drones streaked into the sky like a swarm of steel wasps. Modified crop dusters, hobby planes, even old Cessnas, rigged with bombs and cannon shells, took to the air. Below, humans opened fire. Not precision warfare, not military formations, just uncoordinated chaos. A tidal wave of screaming engines, yelling mouths, and improvised weapons. The mothership's shields flickered with each impact. On board, Gragthor officers howled in disbelief. The ground creatures were supposed to flee, to beg, not climb into the sky. One ship exploded into their hull. A school bus, painted with flames, stuffed with fuel tanks, rigged to detonate on impact. Earth's first manned kamikaze. They called it the Yellow Beast. It punched a hole in the throne's side. Ash and his team felt the blast beneath their boots. Pressure drop in outer chamber. Doc shouted. Whiston stopped typing. "Doesn't matter. I'm in." Then the lights in the pulse room flickered. The panel turned green. Locked. Disabled. But they weren't leaving. The doors blew inward with a scream of metal. Gragthor elites stormed in, snarling, armored, weapons ready. Hammer screamed and charged. He didn't survive, but he slowed them. Doc threw everything he had, scalpels, thermite, his own fists, until a plasma bolt punch through his chest. Blink vanished into the shadows. Took 3 with her before the 4th skewered her. Wisp looked up at Ash. "I can blow the core. Right now." Ash nodded. "Do it. I won't make it." Ash didn't blink. None of us were supposed to. Outside, Caleb saw the side of the throne swell. He felt it. The pulse changed. The hum in the air reversed. Jenny screamed in her mic. "They're lighting it up from inside." And then, boom, a flash that carved the sky open like a wound. The entire mothership lit up with veins of light. Fire shot from its underbelly. The shields cracked. Panels peeled. Engines screamed. Then came the fall. The throne, command center of the Gragthor, fell. Not drifted, not floated. Fell. Burning, screaming, shattering. Like a god thrown from heaven. It struck the desert floor in a wave of molten metal, broken screams, and ash. The earth shook. Windows shattered in 10 states. Satellites saw it from orbit, and silence followed. On screens all across Earth, the message blinked. Pulse disabled. Command neutralized. Mission complete. No names. No signatures. Just the words. Ash and his team had done it. At the cost of everything. But it wasn't over yet. From above, other Gragthor ships loomed, small ones. Patrol vessels. Survivors. Now motherless. Leaderless. And Earth. Earth was done being quiet. The wreckage of the throne steamed in the Nevada dirt like a fallen meteor. Its black hull split open in 100 places, glowing from the inside like dying coals. Plumes of alien fire reached into the sky, and pieces of the ship, whole decks, weapons, command modules, lay scattered across miles of desert. Ash, Wisp, Hammer, Blink, and Doc were gone, but they weren't forgotten. Within hours, murals started appearing on ruined city walls. 5 figures silhouetted in front of a burning mothership. Below them, the words, "They bought our tomorrow." Around the world, cheers erupted. Tears too. Celebrations in war zones. Victory dances on rooftops. Kids lighting fireworks with flamethrowers. For the first time since the invasion, Earth didn't feel broken. It felt angry and proud and alive. But the sky wasn't empty. Above the smoke, a dozen Grakthor patrol ships hovered, scanning the ruins of their fallen leader. Inside, alien officers screamed into fractured communication lines. Their caste system, dependent on hierarchy and ritual, had collapsed in seconds. Without the throne, there was no high command, no ritual, no order, just rage and chaos. On the ground, Caleb stood over a cracked map and grinned like a madman. "They're still up there," he said, "floating, waiting, hoping we'll break." Jenny Alvarez sat beside him, goggles on her head, fingers typing furiously into her drone control pad. They should know better by now. The new plan formed in minutes. Not because some general said so, not because of orders, because Earth doesn't wait for justice. It makes it. Keisha, now running global comm from a solar-powered lab in New Mexico, intercepted Grakthor distress signals. They were arguing. One wanted a retreat, one wanted revenge, another demanded a ritual purge. They couldn't agree. Humans seized the moment. In Brazil, hacked cargo cranes launched captured alien energy cells directly at their hovering ships, ripping holes in their hulls. In Norway, retired missile engineers rewired Cold War nukes and aimed them straight at alien dropcraft, firing with remote triggers made from kitchen timers and old Nokia phones. In the Philippines, school children helped rig boats with sound decoys and mirrors, confusing alien targeting systems long enough for adult fighters to climb aboard and slit throats with knives made from melted ship scraps. Earth had turned every age, every hand, every mind into a weapon. The Grakthor were bleeding. Desperate now, the alien commanders made a last broadcast. One voice, shaken but still proud, echoed through hacked satellite feeds, TV screens, even blinking out of car radios. "We came to rule. You should have knelt. Now we erase you." But humanity responded without speaking. In every city, humans raised one symbol. Middle fingers, painted on banners, lit up with flashlights, drawn on walls in the dust, raised by survivors missing limbs, by kids wearing makeshift armor, by grandmothers holding kitchen knives. Caleb grabbed a bullhorn and aimed it at the sky. "You want to erase us? Come down and try." And they did. 3 alien ships broke formation and dove toward Earth, engines roaring, weapons glowing. One toward Cairo, one toward Atlanta, one toward Berlin. We didn't retreat. We waited, because they didn't know they were flying straight into traps. In Berlin, the landing zone had been laced with magnetized debris that jammed their gravity stabilizers. In Cairo, the pyramid ruins were filled with laser-guided mortars hidden beneath fake sand dunes. In Atlanta, entire overpasses were wired with high-voltage coils from abandoned power plants, waiting for proximity triggers. All 3 ships, gone, crushed, torn open like cans by humans who'd learned to build bombs out of air conditioners and vengeance. The last Grakthor ships hesitated. Their screens flickered. Their warriors began to argue. And Earth smiled, because this war was no longer just survival. It was domination. The sun rose over scorched fields and shattered cities. But this sunrise felt different. It didn't burn with despair. It burned with purpose. The ash in the sky swirled with wind like a signal flare, and the world, all of it, leaned in closer. Something was changing. Above Earth, the final Grak-Thor ships, 6 of them, hovered like vultures over a corpse. Only the corpse was fighting back, biting, scratching, rising, and the vultures were bleeding. In orbit, Grak-Thor commanders no longer barked orders. They whispered them. Their armor wasn't polished anymore. It was dented, splattered with purple blood, patchworked with Earth tech scavenged during their retreat. Their once mighty throne world pride now looked more like panic. Because Earth wasn't supposed to fight back like this. In every alien file, we were primitive, chaotic, soft. They couldn't process what they saw now. A species that refused to kneel, a species that used microwave ovens to hack laser drones, a species that burned their own cities just to trap enemy squadrons inside. We had rewritten the rules, and they didn't have a playbook for us. On the ground, Commander Caleb stood atop a wrecked Grak-Thor tank near the ruins of New Chicago. He was draped in a blood-stained Earth flag and holding a pulse rifle he didn't fully understand, but it didn't matter. "Broadcast this," he said to Keisha over the global comms. "Make sure they hear me." Keisha patched it through satellites, hijacked alien tech, even old radio towers long thought dead. Caleb looked straight into the drone camera. "To the last of you cowards still floating up there, let me say it slow so your oversized skulls get it." He leaned forward, voice sharp, feral. "We ain't done." The Grak-Thor War Council shattered within the hour. 2 of their captains mutinied. One self-destructed his own ship out of shame. Another sent a distress beacon to their home system, pleading for reinforcements, for retreat, for anything. But Earth was done waiting. We had a plan. Project Reclaim. Hundreds of drones, scrap-built, armed, and ready, launched from rooftops across the planet. Each one carried hacked alien code, reverse-engineered from scraps recovered during the first weeks of the invasion. Each drone flew higher, faster. They didn't just target ships. They targeted life support systems, alien oxygen processors, gravity generators, language cores, water reclamation. Humans didn't go after the armor. They went after the air. Within 30 minutes, 2 ships were rendered completely uninhabitable. Inside, Grak-Thor soldiers clawed at their necks, drowning in invisible panic. Some fired at each other. Some broke open supply crates, looking for helmets that weren't there. Back on Earth, a new kind of silence fell. Not fear, not grief, anticipation. And then, something unbelievable happened. One of the remaining Grak-Thor ships blinked all its lights, 3 times, slow, deliberate. A signal. They wanted to surrender. Caleb stood in the shattered Capitol building in Washington, D.C., holding the encrypted tablet connected to the alien signal. He stared at it for a full minute, and then, without ceremony, he pressed the decline button. "No deals," he muttered. "They started this in arrogance. They'll end it in pain." Elsewhere, civilians, now resistance fighters, cheered. In makeshift bunkers, in ruined schools, on cratered streets, humans shouted one word that echoed from continent to continent. "Finish." We sent up the last of our jerry-rigged missiles. Homemade, untested, strapped together with faith and fury. We aimed them not at their weapons or command centers, but at their retreat pods. There would be no escape. One by one, the final ships were struck. Some exploded in silence above the clouds. Some fell in roaring fireballs. One cracked in half and plummeted into the Pacific Ocean, creating a tsunami that swept across old naval graveyards. It was over, not with a treaty, not with surrender, with extinction. The Grakthor were gone. Not because we were the strongest, but because we were the most dangerous kind of species. The kind that doesn't know when to quit. The kind that builds weapons from scraps and hope. The kind that turns grief into fuel. The last spark of violet fire blinked out in Earth's orbit. And just like that, the stars were ours again. No more enemy shadows blotted the sky. No more foreign symbols hovered in our atmosphere. No more broadcasts in that guttural, choking tongue. Silence returned, but this time it was our silence. The kind born not from fear, but from finality. The war was over, but the story? It was just beginning. Across the planet, survivors emerged from bunkers, caves, subways, and shattered homes. Dust-covered kids blinked up at blue sky. Farmers returned to crumbled fields. Soldiers stitched together by makeshift med kits and willpower alone looked around at the broken earth and smiled because it was still ours. In New York, the Statue of Liberty stood half-melted, her torch barely a stub, but she still stood. People gathered around her in silence. Someone raised a human flag atop the ruined crown. Another man, his face wrapped in bandages, played a harmonica. No lyrics, just sound. Raw, cracked, defiant. In Tokyo, a group of teenagers lit floating lanterns and launched them into the air. Written on each paper were names of those lost. Whole families, friends, pets, but also a message scribbled again and again. You try to wipe us out. You only woke us up. In Nairobi, they erected a monument out of crushed alien armor, shaped into a fist holding Earth in its palm. In Rio, a kid with one arm hacked into the dead alien comm system and made it broadcast one message across the galaxy. Come again if you dare. Back in D.C., Commander Caleb sat with Keisha on the Lincoln Memorial steps. Or what was left of them. The old president's legs were gone, so was most of his face. But his stone hands still rested on the chair's armrests, fists clenched as if even he had fought back. Keisha looked up at the fractured sky. They'll send more, won't they? Caleb nodded slowly. Eventually. Then what? He chuckled. Then we show him the highlight reel. Behind them, a new Council of Nations met, not in some polished marble room, but in a bombed-out subway station. No suits, no ties, no egos, just survivors, builders, fighters, people with scars and blueprints and big, wild ideas. They didn't talk about rebuilding the past. They talked about building forward. No more borders, no more flags, just Earth, united not by fear of invasion, but by memory of what they did when it came, by what they became. Out of the ashes, Project Bastion was born. A fleet, human-made, human-crewed, but not for war, for warning. Because if any alien empire was watching, if they thought Earth was a softball of dirt, ripe for conquest, then they needed to see what we could become when cornered. They needed to know we didn't forget, and we never forgive. A decade later, the first human vessel left the solar system. Built from Grakthor tech, powered by stolen energy cores, its hull painted with every language Earth had ever spoken. Its name? The Reminder. And on its side, written in massive, carved letters that shimmered in the void. Earth never kneels, because we are not the kind to beg, not the kind who fold, we're the kind who rise. Every time,